So in the first segment, we learned that both you gentlemen are pro-life candidates, correct?
Yeah.
And you're both gun rights candidates as well. So far we're agreeing on things here.
Yeah.
See how that goes.
And you'll find out that we agree on quite a few things.
Yeah. So Joe, we'll start with you this time. Talk a little bit. What is your #1 issue that you're campaigning on? What is if you go down there to St. Paul, what's the top issue that you really have in mind that you'd like to address?
As I've maybe alluded to already, it's the dysfunction. It's the ability for the Democrats and Republicans to come together and work for the people. You know, the Constitution says we the people, not we the party. And we've got it wrong down there, and we've got it so wrong in Washington as well. And it is just so frustrating for me, coming from the commissioner base, the council base, and the mayor base, that we should be focusing, working on the people. And I have no trouble. If the solution is coming from the Republicans, let's use that solution. Solutions are not Democrat or Republican. Solutions are what's best for the people. And we're really way off base with that. And I know there are people in both the House and the Senate that have similar feelings as well. They want to work together. But once they get down there, they put those jerseys on. Well, when I stepped into this race, I talked with the DFL, and I said, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to vote party line. And they said, oh, Persky, yeah, you'll have the ability to do that. And I said, no, I'm serious. In fact, if you try to make me vote party line, I'll move my desk into the hallway. And they printed that in the Tribune. So I'll tell you what, I am determined. People say, Persky, you can't do it that way. Well, you know, could I run around Mille Lacs Lake? Yes, I did. Could I run over 100 marathon? Yes, I did. I'm determined to actually make a difference and try to turn this around.
All right, Jeff Howe, talk a little bit about, I mean, obviously you've been down at the state capitol for a while now in the House chamber. Moving over to the Senate, what do you think you could get done down there right now?
Well, and I think we're going to continue to move on transportation funding. I mean, that's been a priority of mine while we've been down there, and we did make some movement on that, but we need to get stable funding for transportation so we can do good planning and get a good infrastructure of transportation in and not only roads, but we also need airports, we need our ports. That's all a piece of that. And but the biggest issue I think that we're facing that still plagues, especially rural Minnesota, is our health care insurance cost. And that health care insurance cost, we've got to find a fix for that. And we're kind of hamstrung a little bit by the federal government, but I believe what we should do is ask for a variance or a waiver and be able to go back and do something that we had before the ACA came into effect, and we should do the MCHA fund, where we took those folks that had pre-existing conditions, and those folks that had a hard time getting health insurance, and they could go into the MCHA fund, and they'd pay a little extra, probably about a 20% increase surcharge on those, but they got insurance, and it was good insurance. And then I think you'd see the individual market, the cost of that insurance really drop if we could get that done. Because that's what exploded it. What we did was we took the sickest people that we had and dumped them into the individual market, which was the smallest market we had. And it just drove the prices right out of it. It just skyrocketed. I mean, with people paying $30,000, $35,000 a year out before the insurance company pays nickel one is, well, it's absurd. I mean, you can't function like that. So I think that is a mainstay that we need to fix is that health insurance piece that is affecting so many of our citizens.
No question about it. I think that's the monster we have to grab hold of. When I'm talking to people at the doors, Jeff, you're right. It is health care. If you walk down to the state fair and you walk through that midway, you see tens of thousands of people. You know, which ones of those don't need health care? Every single one of those people need health care. But the insurance company don't want the one with diabetes. They don't want the woman with breast cancer. They don't want the guy with Parkinson's or the brain tumor. They want to make sure they're making their premiums paid by the folks that don't need so much health care. We've got to find a way to grab hold of that, and like you said, that's a possible solution so that everybody can have affordable health care in the state. No question about it.
Let's talk about the skills gap. That's a story that we have had, we've done many stories on WJON in the newsroom over the last several years, and it's a huge issue right here in Senate District 13. So what can be done at the legislative level, Jeff, to help close that skills gap and get the people who don't have jobs?
Well, I think I think we need to take a look at something what the unions do. The unions have an apprenticeship program, and fits right in with the labor shortage. And I think that we need to expand that. So actually, it doesn't make any difference whether it's a union or a non-union job, that we could do something with apprenticeship programs so people could get out there and start working for, you know, electrician, a plumber, or a building official like me. I tell you what, the building official trade is in real dire straits, because I know 2-3 years ago we had a meeting with the state building official. He said, how many, there was like 70 of us in there. He said, how many of you plan to retire in the next 3 to 5 years? Over half raised their hand. There is no program to certify building officials in the state of Minnesota. To develop them. There's a program to certify them, but you got to get your own knowledge. You got to get your own points to be able to even take the test. So I think I've talked to the state building official, and I think that's a way that we should be able to look at that and provide a method and possibly some funding to make those apprenticeship programs available to all these different places, and make sure that they can go out there, apprenticeship. Because I talked to Minnesota Trailer in Minnesota Manufacturing in Avon. They would take anybody that would pass a drug test and show up for work. If they pass the drug test and show up for work, they'd train them to do what they need them to do. But that's where they have the problem. So there's some things that we have to work on, but I think that's a possibility. Trade schools are an excellent way to get those folks and fill that gap, but we do need to make sure we have the trained individuals to make that happen.
How about you, Joe? Like, skills gaps?
Yeah, absolutely right. There's no question about that. You know, and some of that also, you know, starts back in the high schools as far as drawing interest of what potential interests those students might have, and being able to have those types of opportunities, as we did in Sartell, you know, a technology unit, that the students would be able to experience a wide variety of different things as well. But as far as post-high school, you know, getting kids encouraged to go to vocational technical schools, community college, opposed to the traditional college education. I think that's also a key, is that college isn't the best for everyone, and we need to find a way to get them into community college, vocational schools, and make that affordable. That's another thing that I'm hearing about, the inability for them to be able to go to school, and then the debt they have when they come out. You know, we go to the bank and we get 0.5% for our money. But yet we got students that are paying 5, 6, 7%. It just doesn't sound right that the money is not available for students to buy, you know, get at a lower rate. And there should be a way for that to happen.
How about the budget surplus? I don't know what the figure is right now, but I'm assuming we're probably, whoever goes down to the St. Paul to represent us in the Senate is going to have a surplus again this year. Joe, we'll start with you this time. How would you address that? Would you spend the money?
Whoa, yeah, well, you don't know Joe Persky if you say spend the money. In fact, my kids know NOS, which means not on sale, and we're not buying it. You know, I'm a frugal guy. I cut coupons, I change my own oil, I do all my auto repairs within reason. I'd even do my own dental work. I could if I could anyway, but no, that's just a joke. But I'll tell you what, we always have to work within our budget, and even in Sartell, I've had passed budgets down. And government needs to be responsible, but by the same token, also it's responsible for making sure services are happening there. We've got to have prudent spending. It's just not like it's free money and it's going to go somewhere. And I would hope that you know, getting down there, we would take a look again. Where are the best investments to make that? I guess one area that would have been possible, I think the adult and disabled had a 7% cut in their funding in the programming there, and we were looking to put that 7% from the federal level back in there. Now that would have been an appropriate way to use that funding to make that up until the federal correction would have happened there. So yeah, let's not go ahead and just spend that money. Let's make sure we use that money wisely. And as Jeff talked about too, transportation infrastructure, so important, and we got to make sure that we maintain that and are doing the right thing as far as that investment goes.
And Jeff, talk a little bit about, you've been at the state legislature with a lot of budget surpluses.
Absolutely.
How have you voted? Like, what have you done with that money?
Well, we've been forced to spend some of that money for the simple fact that otherwise the governor wasn't going to sign the bill. But on the other side of but you know, when we talk about tax cuts, guess what? They count that as spending. It sounds ridiculous, but even though we're going to cut taxes, they count that as spending. So that's kind of the way they do business down there. But I believe the first thing that I think we should do next year with that surplus is complete the process that we reduced some of the Social Security taxes that we collect. The tax on Social Security, we reduced some of that. I think it's $35,000 below. I'd like to go away with the surplus, the taxes on Social Security. Let's cut that. And because those folks, most of those folks on Social Security, they're on their fixed income. That's all they get. It's already been taxed once, folks. Let's not tax it again. So give those folks that are on Social Security, let's eliminate that tax. And if we can figure out a way to do some other taxes, a lot of people are looking at that infrastructure, and I do believe we need to spend more on roads, and they keep saying we need a gas tax. Well, it's hard to pass a gas tax when you constantly have a surplus. So that's where my bill that was going to take the sales tax on automotive parts and put that towards roads and bridges. And I think that's an important piece that we still need to fully implement. And I'd like to see it as a constitutional amendment myself, because I think that only makes sense that if you buy a new car, that sales tax goes to roads and bridges. But if you're buying parts to keep your old car on the road, like I was doing with my old Suburban, and that's how this idea came up, I think it should go to the same place, and that's transportation.
All right. I've only got a couple minutes left to wrap up the show. We had this discussion off the air. I'm really curious how worried the both of you are about outside influences are going to be on this race. Because we've had a nice civil conversation in this room, the three of us, Joe and Jeff and I. But ultimately, there's going to be a lot of messages out there that you guys can't control. So Jeff, we'll start with you this time. Talk a little bit about how concerned you are about outside money and influences trying to influence voters in Stearns County.
I think it's going to be huge. And make no, if it's already happened to me. I got an email from a gentleman that had a push-pull polling. They were asking him questions and basically trying to find the problem areas in actually Joe. And I tell you what, he came back and wrote me an email. He says, I'd never vote for somebody like Jeff because he denigrates his opponent. Well, that wasn't me. It wasn't my campaign. I've got no control over that. And people don't understand when that outside money comes in, we don't have any say on how it's spent, what they're doing with it, how they do it. And I'll guarantee you, I've run 3 races in the House, never said a negative word about my opponent. I'm not going to start now. I'm going to talk about what I plan on doing and what I bring to the table. But I will guarantee you, because I've heard the stories about the minority leader in the Senate has vowed that he's going to spend $1 million against me on this race. And I can't believe it's all going to be positive things about Joe. I got to believe some negative things. I told my wife when we agreed to do this that we're going to find out stuff about me that I don't even know, because they're going to make stuff up. And I think that that's going to happen not only to me, it's also going to happen to Joe. And I told Joe, I'll guarantee you, you won't hear a negative thing about you out of me. I won't say it because I don't think, it's just not the way to win a race.
Yeah, so Joe, on that same note, like, how do you get your message out there when other people are trying to cloud our judgment, if you will?
Yeah, as Jeff mentioned, I know there's some of the negative phone calling going out there about me, and that's disheartening, to me. And, as much as you hope that politicians have a thick skin, I'll tell you what, a person does take that stuff to heart. But I'll tell you, on those expenditures, yeah, I don't know what's going on behind the curtain. I've been told that there's going to be all kinds of money, but I haven't seen it. I don't know where this money supposedly is or how it's going to actually go about. But there too, as I go to door, I talk to people. I says, you know what, I like Jeff. Jeff's a good man. We've worked together as he's been down at the legislature and I've been on the county as a commissioner. And I'm not going to actually be running against Jeff. That's not my intent. I'm running for Joe Persky, and I'm going to put my best foot forward and show what I want to do for the people. And I didn't do that when I ran as a commissioner against Mark Bromanchenko. I never had a bad word towards Mark, and Mark and I are friends, and he did a good job. And Jeff does a good job as a legislator. And I want to just put my best foot forward and keep the negativity out of it.
All right, gentlemen, we're completely out of time. Great discussion. Thanks, you guys. Republican Jeff Howe, Democrat Joe Persky in the studio with us live. They're running for the Senate District 13 seat, which is a good chunk of the eastern part of Stearns County, with the exception of the city of St. Cloud, Sartell, Sauk Rapids, too.
So basically wrap right around St. Cloud and St. Augusta.
Yeah, so that'll be coming up in November.